if you are following English, you can stay in this channel. But if you want to move to the respective language interpretation, please do so. We have this language, as you probably know already, interpretation icon where you can change your channel. So moving on with the session, the organizers for the session is Center for Reproductive Rights, Forum for Women, Law and Development in Nepal, Gender and Development for Cambodia, and Sama Resource Group for Women and Health in India. And I'll be moderating the session for today. We have 4 speakers, and I'll ask my speakers to introduce themselves respectively. But to start with, I will introduce myself. My name is Bhavina Bhattacharya. I'm a human rights lawyer based in Nepal, and I'm the senior manager for Asia and Center for Reproductive Rights. And Center for Reproductive Rights is a global human rights organization working towards ensuring reproductive rights are protected in law as fundamental human rights. So and with this, I would now request my colleagues, speakers, to introduce themselves. And I'll start with Chandi, and if you can go in the alphabetical order and hand over to other colleagues. Over to you, Chandi.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chandi, and I am the Executive Director of Gender and Development for Cambodia. You can call it GATSI. So the Gender Development for Cambodia, as you can hear the name, we are based in Cambodia and work on gender and development. We have been established in 2000, so it's been like 2 decades running already for this organization. We focus on women in political, reproductive rights, economics, and also climate justice. Thank you. Yeah, so next would be Jihan.
Thanks, Chandi, and hi, everyone. I'm Jihan Jacob. I'm a human rights lawyer, and I'm with the Center for Reproductive Rights, so same with Probina. I'm the Senior Legal Advisor for Asia, and I'm based here in the Philippines. Turning it over now to Sabine.
Thank you, Jihan. Good afternoon and namaste to all. I'm Sabine. I'm from Nepal. I'm a practicing lawyer and also the Executive Director of Forum for Women, Law and Development, and looking forward to these discussions. Sarojini.
Thanks, Sabine. I'm Sarojini, and I'm based in New Delhi, India. And I am a founder of a women's feminist resource group called Sama in Delhi. And I'm also a steering committee member and Health for All coordinator of People's Health Movement Global. And I have been working on the issues related to gender and with the intersectionalities, and also looking at medical and reproductive technologies and pandemics and many, many related issues. And lovely to be here, and then looking forward to learning from all of you and interacting with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarojini, and thank you, everyone. We are having some technical issue in terms of the internet connection for many of us. So there might be some disruption during the session, but we'll try to make the transition as smooth as possible. So bear with us if we lose you for a few seconds or a minute or two. Then moving on, as our topic is about assisted reproduction and emerging issue in Asia, and we are also trying to focus on how the capacity of our lawyers and activists can be strengthened, especially to look at the issue from the human rights framework perspective. So our focus will be on the issue, the emerging context in the several countries in the region, but also looking at it from the human rights perspective. So to begin with, I would also like to have some interaction with you all. It might be a new topic for you as well. It might be something that you are familiar with also. So just wanting to have some very basic questions about the topic if we can interact. So Do, if you can share your screen and show the questions that we have for the interaction. And for the participants, if you can respond in the chat, most of the questions are just yes and no questions. So, and few questions have some like your opinion as well. So let's go through the question one at a time. Yeah. Okay. The first question is assisted reproduction a familiar term for you? So you can, if you know about this term, you can just write yes. If it is not a familiar term for you, you can put no in the chat box. So if everyone can come to the chat box and yes, okay, we have first yes, 2 yeses. Great. Okay, great. So we have many yeses coming. Okay. And since I cannot read I think it's a Lao script. So if someone can translate that to me, whether it's a yes or no. So far I have seen yes, many yeses and one a response which I cannot read. Great. Okay, so I think this is a very diverse group. So I'm really happy to have this conversation carry this conversation forward. Okay, so the Lao participant also say yes. Yes, great, absolutely thrilled to have this response from you. So we can move to the next question. Okay, now the next term is surrogacy. So have you come across with this term? Are you familiar with this term, surrogacy? Again, just yes or no answer. I think this is yes, reading at the previous script. It looks very similar. Yes, yeah, Ananda, yes. Yes, yeah, so Lao participants say yes, great, thank you. Thank you, Panjay. Any other response from any other participants? So far, we only have yeses, which is absolutely great. Okay. Okay, no worries. We can move to next question as we probably there is more response coming up, but I cannot see it. So, okay, there's more yes. Okay, so let's move to next question quickly. There's one more response. If I can have the translation in English, that would be really helpful. And as we are getting the translation for these responses, if we can also have the third question. Oh, sorry. If you, yeah, am I better audible now? Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So the third question, if we can go to the third question. Oh, you can't hear me. Let me try to move my mic a little bit closer. Is it better now? Okay, I'll try to speak louder as well. Okay, great. Now, can we go to the next third question, please? Okay, so now it's a question about your understanding and your opinion about both assisted reproduction and surrogacy. So if you can type in a sentence or two about what do you understand from the terms assisted reproduction and surrogacy, that would be really helpful. So what is your opinion or understanding about assisted reproduction and surrogacy? I'll give few minutes because it might take few minutes to type in this response. So yeah, I'll wait for the responses to come and pop in the chat. One way to access SRHR, great. Any other response? Yeah, I guess you are typing, so I'm going to give you like a minute. Okay, we have some response here and waiting to get the English translation of that. Okay. And we also have update for participant who wants to listen in the Hindi channel. If you can move to Thai channel to listen to Hindi. So that's an update from our secretariat. Okay, so the participants in Lao responded that it's not a natural way. Okay, we'll go into some of that discussion later during the presentation, but thank you for your response. Any other response on the third question? What is your understanding about assisted reproduction and surrogacy? Getting pregnant instead of other person. Okay, and there's one more in another language. Very beautiful script, but I cannot read, so I'll wait to get the English translation. Okay, and as I'm waiting for the English translation for this latest response, can we have the fourth question, please, in the slide? So we have two responses now on the third question. Doug, can we also have the fourth question now? Okay, so this would be our final question, and it is again the yes/no question. So do you think assisted reproduction and surrogacy are human rights issues? So if you think it's a human rights issue, please put yes. And if you think it's not a human rights issue, please feel free to put no as well. And meanwhile, I'm also waiting to get the translation on the two responses on third question. Okay, translation. I thought it is a couple who may have difficulty having children, so they have another person become pregnant through a scientific process. Thank you so much for the response and also for the translation. Okay, so on the first question, we are getting responses, 2 yeses and another response, probably yes or no. We'll see. Yes, yes. La participants say yes. Okay, great. Great. Okay, so thank you everyone for participating in this thought interaction and sharing about your understanding and your thoughts as well, which is very helpful, and really looking forward to hear from our panel as well as in the introduction. And probably we could also touch on some of the responses you have shared here. So just to start with, or to kind of set the context before I hand over to my speakers, I would like to start with a very brief understanding of what is, like understood widely in terms of these terminologies. And I'm sharing, we are not going with the fifth question, so we can stop sharing the screen. Yeah. So, and Sarojini, given your background, you can correct me later on, but in terms of these terminologies, the assisted reproductive terminology, it includes all treatments or procedure that includes in vitro handling of both human oocytes and sperm or the embryos for the purpose of establishing a pregnancy. So this includes, but not only limited to, it includes the in vitro fertilization, embryo transfer, as well as gestational surrogacy. And surrogacy, as many of you have also responded, it's a part of the assisted reproductive technology, is an arrangement in which a person agrees to undertake a pregnancy with intention to carry it to the term and hand the child over to the intending parent. And the surrogate is the person who undertakes the pregnancy with an intention to carry it to the term and hand it over to the intending parent. So the assisted reproduction is use of this technology, which is available, scientifically available, to procreate, to form a family, and also to treat infertility. So infertility, we'll hear from the speakers later, it's a big public health concern globally and in Asia also. And right to form a family is integral to human rights. So use of assisted reproduction is to both to treat infertility and also to form a family. And talking about the trend in Asia, why we need to talk about the issue now and why it is an emerging issue. So it's a rapidly growing issue in Asia, especially surrogacy. And it has emerged as an international hub also for surrogacy. And as you may also know, the countries in the region like Cambodia, Laos, India, Nepal, Thailand, Vietnam have been seen as a surrogacy destination for many other countries beyond Asia, and also for countries in Asia as well. And despite this trend, it is a topic which is largely unregulated in our region. And even when this is regulated, which you will see in case of India in later from Sarojini's presentation, often the human rights approach is missing. So governments are also very kind of grappling with this legal and ethical question around surrogacy. And because of the lack of clarity in the laws and the lack of laws itself, in some places we can see a trend when there's a clampdown or restriction in one country for surrogacy, the practice actually moves to either underground or to a new country. So that results in a more complex operation across border, which also puts parties to the surrogacy, especially the surrogate woman, into more vulnerable positions. So we can see a trend going from Thailand, India, Nepal, Cambodia, and now Laos. So from that sense, it is also a transnational issue. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that we'll be focusing on the human rights framework. So talking about the human rights and reproductive rights framework, I would also want to give a very, very big snapshot on the reproductive rights. So reproductive rights deals with the most intimate aspect of the identity of an individual. So it includes exercising control over one's body and reproductive choices. It is about having a right to make a decision about reproduction, free of discrimination, free of coercion, or free of violence. And a woman's right to life, liberty, security, health, autonomy, privacy, education, equality, and non-discrimination, and can name range of human rights that affect women. It cannot be protected. They cannot be protected if the reproductive rights are not protected. And gender equality can also not be achieved without ensuring that the enjoyment of reproductive rights is there. And the reproductive rights, it draws from it's part of the universal human rights that are grounded in the fundamental guarantees and protected in many international instruments. And it covers the spectrum of civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. And the reason I'm kind of giving you this snapshot about the reproductive rights is the issues surrounding assisted reproduction, including surrogacy. They are intrinsic or integral part of the reproductive rights, and they implicate the core human rights issue as right to health, right to form a family, as I mentioned, sexual and reproductive health, decision-making about reproductive life and reproductive choices, reproductive autonomy, benefit from scientific progress, equality and non-discrimination, informed consent, and others. And the human rights narrative about assisted reproduction, particularly surrogacy, is still growing. It's very nascent, at the very nascent state, and it's growing. And there is a limited human rights jurisprudence about surrogacy. So this is an emerging issue in terms of the trend as well as also the growing human rights framework. So from that perspective also, it will be useful to have this conversation and build the capacity of lawyers and advocates and policymakers, activists on especially looking at this issue from the human rights framework. So with that backdrop and with that objective in mind, our session today will be on sharing the experiences and context from 3 countries in Cambodia, India, and Nepal, how the issue has been dealt with, the challenges, the remaining human rights issues around both assisted reproduction and surrogacy. And then we'll also discuss a little bit, the speakers will also discuss a little bit about how the pro bono community can bring in their support to build the capacity and build the movement and build the human rights narrative. So with that, I will now move to my colleague from India, Sarojini. And Sarojini will be highlighting about the 2 assisted reproductive legislation in India and how these laws have come in force, the kind of a very long journey to come to this state now, and how both public health and legal community have engaged and the kind of moving forward next steps. So Sarojini, over to you. You have like 15 to 17 minutes, and I'll ring you at 15 minutes. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Pravina. I think there is some audio issue. I hope I am audible. I hope it's not from my end. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just thanks for that, laying the the ground and then the landscape for these 2 issues, Pravina. And I just thought today I might, take you all into through 2-3 issues which are, very much contemplated, debated, and deliberated in Indian context on ARTs and surrogacy. But I will mainly focus on surrogacy. I just want to, just give an example of, we are working on the issue of infertility, assisted reproductive technologies, and surrogacy for the last 15-20 years, from local research to evidence building to the talking about surrogates' rights or infertility, consider government infertility as a public health issue, and also the regulation of surrogacy and assisted reproductive technologies, because in our country, surrogacy is mainly in the private domain, private hospitals, and most of the assisted reproductive technologies which we have, which Prabina said, in vitro fertilization, wherein the sperm and egg are fertilized outside the body and the embryo is transferred into the woman. So that is the most common thing. So both the surrogacy and the ART are interlinked because of the technology to some extent, which combines two. So there is an overlap and the connect between surrogacy and assisted reproductive technologies. So we thought we should start from infertility. That is a main issue. Why you are going for IVF, or why you want to opt for surrogacy. There may be many reasons, but for us in the beginning, within the moment, we thought it is important to start with infertility. So our research, particularly, on surrogacy, which showed us why anybody enters into commercial surrogacy, because we looked at it's mostly commercial surrogacy till the legislation. So it became a big epicenter for surrogacy, as Prabina said, before Thailand or many other countries. So we had till 2013, we had many foreign nationals coming and accessing surrogacy. And from many, many countries, there was, we call it as a reproductive or fertility tourism. And then it is a big part of the medical tourism industry. Right now, it's only restricted to in vitro fertilization, but not for surrogacy. There is a guideline which is statutory for the foreign nationals. So when we started looking at it, why people enter into surrogacy, we know in our own work, mostly the poor, and because of the conditions of unemployment and struggle to run a household. And there is no other work option which enable earning such a large sum of money, because in surrogacy, you get at one point of time, a big sum of the money compared to what they earn in a day with their own other, work, whether it can be a domestic work or other informal work. And then responsibility for paying of debts, buying a house, or, creating savings for children's education. And the other one, people also told us, surrogates, it is a better option, I put it in quotes, than any other factory work or domestic work. And it is not immoral. I will put it again in the quotes, because giving a child to other couple is a noble work. And it should be seen, life for children that they could not have, creating a life. And also there is a persistence of the, agents or the clinics, and also by the family. These are the reasons why, women generally entered into the surrogacy arrangement. So commercial surrogacy as a practice, it exists precisely because of the existing political economy and the transitions that the practices make from the prescribed dichotomy of the family patriarchy to market and capital. So it is the intersection of multiple systems of power and institutions. So I just wanted to lay that kind of approach here. So we in India separated surrogacy from assisted reproductive technology bill in 2016. That time it was a bill, draft bill. So right now we have two different legislations. One is regulating assisted reproductive technology independent of surrogacy. The other is the Surrogacy Regulation Act. Both were passed in December 2021, but both will be monitored by a combined body. So that is what is. Am I okay? Audible? Okay. So I'm here flagging 2 or 3 points because of the time constraint, which looking into the Surrogacy Regulation Act. So it right now in our country, commercial surrogacy has been prohibited. So it's only altruistic surrogacy, which means when a surrogate carries a child with no monetary compensation, that is allowed, and not commercial surrogacy, and prohibits the sale of embryo or the purchase of embryo or sperm or ova. So this is also part of the bill. And here there is another added thing is that right now they say it can be close relatives or any willing women who can be a single woman, such as a widow or a divorcee, or a person of Indian origin should be allowed to avail of surrogacy between the age of 35 to 45 years. So that is the age which is there in the legislation, and who can be a surrogate is very clear now, and what is the age which is very clear. So these are, couple of things which came into a lot of criticism, and also there were many concerns which are coming under the framework of human rights and reproductive justice, which we just now spoke. So it basically, surrogacy allows for altruistic only to married Indian couples, and readers it call divorcees and disqualify others on the grounds of marital status, age, if you are below 35 or above 45, and sexual identity or gender orientation, which is because that I'll come to it now, not allowing the, people with different sexual identities, and nationality, because it is only for the Indian. And it itself was criticized as an unreasonable classification. So there are many arguments supporting the prohibitionist approach towards commercial surrogacy, often identify the fact of gestating a child and of giving birth in exchange for money as problematic. That is how the ban is in many countries. No, it shouldn't be for money, in exchange of money. So however, the rejection of such an approach and favoring strict regulation of commercial surrogacy as a more appropriate policy response, it does not imply an uncritical acceptance of the practice in its current form, because many of the surrogate mothers are also, women are also willingly entering into the surrogacy arrangement, what we have seen. And so nor does this, imply choosing its legalization only because of an anticipation of its invisible underground growth, which we are all worried, like if you ban, it might be, there may be black marketing of the thing, which happened with the organ, sale in our country. So there was that concern also. And similarly, the preference of, non-commercial or altruistic surrogacy over commercial, it raises, since it obscures the gravity of precariousness of the conditions in which women may enter into such arrangements, being pressurized by relationships of power, lack of autonomy, or making any choices regarding reproduction and childbearing. So all these are, encompassed. It is not like very easy to say this or that. So but it is imperative to recognize that the unequal relations and structures driving the commercial surrogacy industry are also similar to those faced by women in other occupations. So being a surrogate is only one among multiple identities, including engaging in multiple work options of a woman, her autonomy over her body, and her decisions regarding her health, working conditions, and participation in society are structured by the constraints she faces in the different activities and spheres of her life. So that should also be kept in mind when we are debating or discussing. The second point I want to quickly, add here is about the current act, both ART and surrogacy, denies the rights of homosexual couples to commission a child and refuses to acknowledge these couples as legitimate. I put it in quotes. And it does, it also, we have the question because it is against striking down of Section 377 of the Indian Constitution by the Supreme Court of India, which decriminalizes the consensual sexual relations between two adults of any sexuality. So despite same-sex relationships have been decriminalized, rights of transgender individuals have been recognized, live-in relationships were becoming common, and more people are opting to stay single, reinforcing this conservative, heteronormative construction of family and providing opportunities to single or same-sex and live-in relationships start their family using surrogacy has been come under major criticism too. So by effectively putting a bar on homosexual couples, the state has constructed a category of people who can become parents in resonance with the larger patriarchal and other biases of the state and also in the law. That is something we should also keep in mind. So it is more fundamentally, our understanding of reproduction, whether there exists a right to procreate, and if so, what are the foundations on which it rests? So it is the act, it should take into account the right to parenthood of the LGBT community for it to stand the scrutiny of the Constitution and binding international conventions. So that is where the human rights and ethics and also the right to justice comes in. So because we have a Constitution of India, Article 21, it enshrines the principles of right to life, personal liberty, and right to livelihood. So the right to reproduction and child rearing has been recognized. And an important facet of person's right to privacy, dignity, and bodily integrity under Article 21. And we also, endorse the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 16. It says men and women of full age without any limitation due to race, nationality, or religion have the right to marry and to found a family. So there are many, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and that also lays down. So these are the things we should also kept in mind when we are talking about these two issues. So the first thing is it is wrongly premised. These are the discussions which we are having on the fact that the interests of the surrogate mothers are protected by banning commercial surrogacy, and whether it is recognizing that for women it is even more difficult to negotiate rights, compensation, and any monetary benefit within their close family among their own kith and kin. And it is also silent about the expenses to be borne during the process of surrogacy. And also, for nutrition, medical, psychological counseling. And these are all in the private sector. And what is the post-delivery care? All that has, and if there is any death, what will happen to the surrogate? So all these things, the death of the surrogate or death of the child, these are the things which we need to be kept in mind. So the compensation should be, it's not just the, insurance, which is there right now. But what will happen, the things which I have said just now also should be looked into. If there is any event of death of the surrogate mother while undergoing procedures of surrogacy, or in the course of surrogate pregnancy, or while giving birth to a surrogate child, additional compensation should be given to the kin of the surrogate mother. These are some things. So I will end with a couple of recommendations. I just flagged two key points which we are debating and discussing. One is definitely we want to promote non-discriminatory and equitable access to ART and surrogacy, including but not limited to ensuring the effective and rights-based implementation, and remove the discriminatory restrictions to accessing infertility care, based on the determinants which I already mentioned, and ensure access to available, accessible, appropriate, and good quality reproductive health care for all the persons acting as surrogate to promote their right to equality and non-discrimination, dignity and bodily autonomy, and sexual and reproductive self-determination. So we are appealing to review the existing legal framework of both, and the rules are also notified, so how, one can integrate measures to address potential unequal power relations between different actors to a surrogacy arrangement, safeguard the rights of the women acting as surrogates, and also the children who are born through surrogacy, and the commissioning couple or people who are going through the infertility treatments, and prevent from exploitation, discrimination, or any coercion. So this is where we are. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarojini, for this very comprehensive kind of explanation. Also, within the limitation of time, you have really covered this complex issue and elaborated, and also shared some of the thought-provoking issues as well concerning, like, from the commercial surrogacy, why the prohibitionist approach is problematic, and also talking about human rights framework, not only for like one of the parties involved, but all parties, including surrogate women, the children, intending parents, and so forth. So, and also laying some of the remaining issue as well as the recommendation in terms of the continued advocacy for promoting non-discriminatory and equitable access, removing discrimination, and so forth. So thank you so much for this. And if you have any questions to Sarojini, we will have a time later after all presentations are done. So you can either put the questions in the chat, or you can also like speak later. But for now, we will move on with the next presentation. So now from India, I'll go to Cambodia and call on my colleague Sandy to share about the context in Cambodia and how the Cambodian surrogacy or ARD law has been developed. And one of the, as I mentioned, the human rights framework is still being growing and developing. And Cambodia is one of the examples of, contributing in that development or in that growth. And so Sandy will share more about the evolving human rights framework on surrogacy, especially in terms of decriminalization. So Sandy, over to you. And you also have 17 minutes, and I'll flag you in 15 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prabina. And also thank you to Sarojini for the very rich sharing earlier. While listening to Sarojini, I also reflecting back, it's very, very similar to what's happening in Cambodia. So next slide, please. I am sharing what is the situation of surrogacy in Cambodia, and also how the our advocacy at the UN levels look like regarding the surrogacy matter in Cambodia. So imagine that you are a lawyer, or even you are a doctor, or even you are just like the human rights staff working with the government sector or civil society sector. And in one time, there was a case of surrogacy happening at your place, and then someone called you and say like, hey, can you represent me as a lawyer at the court about the surrogacy case, please? But you did not even know what surrogacy is. There was no law available. There was no any expert regarding surrogacy that you can ask. Then how can you represent your client or those kind of people who are charged under the act of surrogate during that trial? So it really happens like in Cambodia. So when we heard about the word surrogacy back in 2015, we kind of feel like this kind of technology is very modern, like that people like infertility or people who can really have child by themselves can using this kind of like assisted reproductive technologies like through surrogacy, and then they will have a kid themselves. But that kind of term just like wow us for a moment. Oh my God, that's kind of thing like so much great that the kind of technologies can do something like this. But later on, do people really understand what surrogacy means? What really happening out there? Next slide, please. So the case of surrogacy in Cambodia, surrogacy practice become like very popular in Cambodia around like 2015. After the increasing of restrictions in neighboring country in Southeast Asia region, like Prabina and also Sarojini mentions, like some kind of like in Thailand, in India, in Nepal, or in like other part in Asia. So in 2015, it was very like kind of modern for us to learn about surrogacy. It's very popular because the practice is also cheap over there in Cambodia. And there is no regulation on surrogacy or any other form of reproductive technology at all during that time. So it's very like popular after the bans, like restricted ban from Thailand. And now it's happening in Laos. Maybe later on, friends who are joining here from Laos can also share the situation of surrogacy that's happening in Laos right now. In 2015, it's very popular in Cambodia, and a lot of like surrogacy agencies become like very rich during that times. The cost of surrogacy in Cambodia is very like cheap. I would like to mention about this again, because like the Australian or Chinese people who would like to have the baby through like surrogacy, they would pay like 40,000 US dollar. And the women who act as surrogate only get like 10,000 US dollar. So like only like 30% of the total amount came to the surrogate's mother, but the rest, like 30,000 US dollar, go directly to the agency. And if we compare that cost to the other country, like in United States or in Australia, that they would pay until 120,000 US dollar, or 30 to 40,000 US dollar go to the surrogate mother. In Cambodia, they only pay 10,000 US dollar. So it's like 30 times difference, more than like 10 times difference with the price that they would pay in Australia or in the United States. And because surrogacy in Cambodia was operating regulated in Cambodia, some country and surrogacy agency declined to engage Cambodia surrogates. Australia, for example, issued a warning to the intended parents from Australia seeking surrogate to avoid Cambodia, but it's still happening. And then in the year of 2016, after 1 year of practice surrogacy in Cambodia, and a lot of people were like enjoying during that time, the Ministry of Health sent kind of like discuss with the Ministry of Justice, and then in 2017 they banned like all form of surrogacy in Cambodia. And then from 2016 to 2018-17, when everything was banned regarding surrogacy, like over 60 women who acted as surrogate have been arrested, and many of them will be released under the condition of like they have to raise the children by their own until the children reach 18 years old. And we can see that this kind of form continue happening 2016, 17, 18. During that time, we do not have the law, and until now we do not have the law yet. But in 2017, the relevant ministry in Cambodia with the special human rights rapporteur and also the UNOHCHR in Cambodia have helped Cambodian government to produce the draft law on surrogacy. But in the draft law itself have not been consulted with the relevant stakeholder. For example, the doctor, the gender specialist people in Cambodia. I'm not saying about those international people. And then the women in 2018 were charged under the law, because there is no surrogacy law, so they charged under the law on anti-human trafficking. So imagine you are a lawyer, and now you are representing the clients who were charged of the Surrogacy Act. But there is no surrogacy law, and they charge your client under the law of anti-human trafficking. So this is like happening in Cambodia from 2017, 18, 19, and 20. Next slide, please. So this is the timeline, as you can see, what happening in Cambodia from 2016, that the Ministry of Women Affairs announced that it would be take steps to protect women and children involved in surrogacy. At that time, there were some kind of like discussions because we all feel that self-autonomy right is the privilege right that women can have, can enjoy, and can do in all of the forms that they mentions, like, and as Sarojini mentions that it's just like a multiple forms of using their body as a woman, and the conservative group as well as some group who are working on the women exploitations act or something also mentions like, if you say like that, surrogacy is the same form as sex work, that women are using their body, but no one's in Cambodia agree that sex work should be work. It should, they still use the word prostitute rather than the word sex work. So this kind of like thing are still under discussing, and the cultural norm, the stereotypes, the gender myth that believe women who do like sex work or surrogacy should not be considered as a proper women. So these kind of like consulting are still going on. And then in early 2017, the government processed to drafting the registrations, the regulation on the surrogacy. And you can ask like, well, if you are not consulted as a local NGO working on gender, how can you access to the law? Because we have like network as the journalists. And then the journalists in 2017 and 18 call and ask us like, what happening after surrogacy? What are the reflections of you giving to the surrogacy happening in Cambodia and the law? And because we did not get to know about those kind of things, we were kind of like nowhere to give the right comment on that. We only understand, oh yeah, it is really reflected with the self-autonomy right and reproductive rights that people should have. Luckily, in 2018, and then the Center of Reproductive Rights, the COR, contacted the Gender and Development for Cambodia, and then they gave us some kind of like analysis idea, giving some kind of like training regarding human rights and the assisted reproductive technology and surrogacy, and also help us analyze the drafted law that the government issued during that time to see how the draft law reflected with the human rights based in Cambodia. So even you can see in this timeline that the government consulted with the UNOHCR special rapporteur about the draft surrogacy law, but it's still really not reflected the human rights based approach, not to mention about women's rights in the CEDAW conventions. Next slide, please. This is the like a very full format of our draft law on surrogacy. It has like 9 chapters and consisted of 62 provisions. And in the articles, in the provision regarding penalty, they still like criminalize and also put the penalty on the surrogate or people who are not really operating it under this kind of law, because this law, this draft law, mentioned that we should really create the National Committee on Surrogacy. And the committee that governing the surrogacy should like have relevant stakeholders such as Ministry of Health, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of like Women Affairs, so that they can like work together on that. But until now, from 2017 until 2022, it's 5 years already. It's still in the discussing. And the discussing is still closed door, not the consultative workshop or discussing with the relevant NGO that working on that kind of things in Cambodia. Next slide, please. Next. So in 2018, when we were contacted by the Center for Reproductive Rights, the COR, we jointly written the shadow report, because it's in the circle of writing the shadow report and government report to the CEDAW committee regarding what's happening of the women rights. And because a lot of women during that time, the surrogate mother were charged under the anti-human trafficking without the surrogacy law, and the draft law on surrogacy also has so many problems. Then we work with the center to write the shadow report regarding this. But it was a very critical issue happening as well, as I mentioned earlier, that a lot of people, as well as the people from the NGO sector, did not really understand about what surrogacy is. So when we put the issue of surrogacy in our shadow report, we kind of like convincing each other, lobbying each other from the national level first, so that everyone can kind of like, well, even in the UN level, there is still misunderstanding that surrogacy is the act of selling kids or the act of selling children, and then it will affect with child right a lot. How can we put this as the advocacy at the UN level? But then because of the strong advocacy and the help from the center, we can like convince the NGO at the national level from our country to put surrogacy as one of the issues in the shadow report, that the government should really not criminalize all forms of surrogacy and adopt a measure to end practice of prosecuting women acting as surrogate, and also making sure that the draft law of the surrogacy really reflect with the human right-based approach, and ensuring the access to full range of sexual and reproductive health services, including maternal health care service for women acting as surrogates throughout the surrogacy process. So this kind of like things we put in our shadow report, and then we send it to the UN committee in 2019. And then next slide, please. And then in late 2019, it was the first time ever at the UN level issue the concluding observation regarding surrogacy. And Cambodia is the first country who receiving this. And I heard from Lao friends mentioning that the committee, the CEDAW committee, who also have been asking around to the civil society in Laos regarding surrogacy as well, and you are now preparing the shadow report. Maybe we can like work with each other and also work with the Center for Reproductive Right to know what's happening in Laos right now regarding the surrogacy, and also the thing that we can do together. So the recommendation from the CEDAW committee mentioned that the government should drop like all charge against the surrogate mother, and also ensuring the surrogate does not impose criminal liability to the surrogate mother, and also include the CEDAW principle in that. So like it seemed like that almost 100% of our asking to the UN committee been answered back by them in the concluding observations under the surrogacy recommendations. So this is how we did it, and this is one of the successful things that happened to us. Next slide, please. And then in the child right coalitions, in the child right committee, the CRC concluding observation in 2022 also mentioned something about surrogacy, that nothing with concern that the criminalization and stigmatization of surrogacy put children born through surrogacy at risk of discrimination. The committee recommends that the state party should adopt the draft law on surrogacy and ensure that it protects the right of children born through surrogacy, including their protection from discrimination and right to access the information about their origins. Next slide, please. So from 2019, after the recommendation from the CEDAW committee, and 2022 from the recommendation from the CRC committee, what the government in Cambodia did is they paused the draft law because of the COVID-19. But earlier of this year, they kind of like processing it again, but still not be openly discussed with the relevant stakeholder. They still continue monitoring what is happening of the surrogate mother and the children's, but not transparency and accountability sharing the information out. They also investigate the case of Cambodian surrogate mother, and they also continue educating the public that surrogacy is crime in this country. Next slide, please. So this is what we have like following up. We like in July 2022 this year, we submit the following up report regarding the CEDAW conflict observation, and then the responding back from the CEDAW committee to the government of Cambodia mentions that what government submitted regarding the following up report after surrogacy, it is very not certified for the committee, and it's very vague. Next slide, please. This is how the committee responded. It has not been implemented. It vague, it incomplete, and unsatisfactory. Next slide, please. So this is the way forward, and maybe something that all the pro bono community can work together as the pro bono communities, that we can continue collect the data and join advocacy with the other CSO to urge the government to address the recommendation from the CEDAW committee. We also should open discussion with the government on the draft law of the surrogacy. So if you have the knowledge regarding the law already, you have the knowledge regarding the assisted reproductive technology, but if you do not have the knowledge regarding gender or human rights based approach, that would not really helpful to represent the client who were charged under the Surrogate Act, or work with the government to assure that the draft law on surrogacy is really answer the human rights based approach. Thank you so much. So it is end to my presentation. I give the floor back to Sabina, please.
Thank you so much, Chandy, kind of walking us through the context in Cambodia, and also very interestingly, as well as kind of enlightening how the advocacy at the UN level went, and how the first time ever in the history of surrogacy in the global discourse, we were able to get the very strong recommendation from the CEDAW committee. So I just wanted to reflect on maybe a few points, starting with this UN advocacy, because as we both Sarojini and we have been saying, and I'll try to speak louder. Is it better now? Okay, so this is a growing issue within the UN system as well. And as an activist, as a lawyers, as an advocates, we have a role to play in a way to bring this narrative in a more concrete and more constructive way, so that this human rights framework would also be developed further. So that is one thing. And in that sense, as Sandy mentioned, for colleagues from Lao, if you would like to engage in this SADA report, and if you would like to collaborate, that's something we can talk separately. So that's one point I wanted to touch on. The other thing I also wanted to, from both Sarojini and Chandy's presentation, one thing I really want to share with everyone here is how surrogacy kind of challenge the traditional norms, the established ways of both procreating, having a child, and also forming a family. So that is another layer of challenges in terms of the narrative building, why it is being seen from in some negative approaches as well, like some connotation on the sale of children and so forth. So we do need to have the dialogue on kind of unfolding the different layers of challenges in terms of this narrative building as well. So with that, I want to move to Nepal with a similar kind of context and challenges, trying to understand the policy and legal landscape, as well as remaining challenge in terms of law and policy itself, and also what could be the next step in terms of the advocacy. So Sabinji, the floor is yours. Again, 17 minutes for you as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Pravinaji, and good afternoon to all. I'm going to, as Pravinaji mentioned, I'm going to highlight the legal policy framework of Nepal regarding the assisted reproduction and surrogacy. But I would like to clarify that in Nepal, unlike in India, we don't have specific legislation to deal with assisted reproductions and surrogacy. And unlike Cambodia, we don't even in a stage to draft the legislation. We haven't in that stage. But in Nepal, there is a landmark decisions from the Supreme Court, not from the very positive perspective, but very restrictive perspective. So I'm going to present the Nepal situations. When we discuss about assisted reproductions and the surrogacy, definitely this is very closely linked with infertility, and infertility is one of the major health problem in Nepal, and it's growing health problem all over the world. And it's estimated that in Nepal, it's a 13 to 15 married Nepali couples suffer from any one forms of infertility. And one of the rapid mapping was conducted by Center for Reproductive Rights and the Forum for Women Law and Development. And that rapid mapping shows that there's at least 6 new cases come to the infertility center every day, and this is a 6-fold increase of from the last 5 years back. So this can be increase of the cases, and this might be the increase of treatment-seeking behavior. But whatever, this is the one of the issue that really need to be focused on. So earlier, when we talked about the RH issue, generally it's more from the antenatal perspective. So it's encouraged to have less children than there is a treatment for having the children. So it's the family planning, safe motherhood, all those things. So this is quite a neglected topic in Nepal from since long time. Now this issue has given importance, and Department of Health Service has formed task force to develop the guideline on infertility and AR. So it's also so that nowadays this issue is growing, and the people behavior, at least for treatment seeking, is increasing, and the government is also taking this issue as a priority issue and giving due importance to this issue. Regarding the policy framework, as I mentioned, we don't have the specific legislation to deal with assisted reproduction or surrogacy, but we do have the constitution framework, and we do have very comprehensive constitution framework, which also cover the infertility or the assisted reproduction or surrogacy issue. So in Nepal, we do have, like other constitution, the constitution in Nepal ensure the right to equality, and right to equality not only cover that there is no discrimination on the basis of sex, but it's also covered there is no discrimination on the basis of marital status, there is no discrimination on the basis of pregnancy and other status. So these two components, this is very new, the marital status and the pregnancy. So this give very wide coverage. And similarly, the reproductive health right, the safe motherhood and the reproductive health right is recognized as a fundamental rights of women. So it's clearly mentioned in our constitutions. And also for the state policy, it says that the state are accountable to ensure the enjoyment of adequate service and facility at the different stages of reproductive stages. So it's also the state policy, it's a very clear accountability put on state that they should ensure the adequate and quality reproductive health service. And as I mentioned that we have the very specific fundamental right regarding the safe motherhood and the reproductive health rights. And to realize that right, Nepal enacted the specific legislation in 2018, that is Safe Motherhood and Reproductive Health Right Act. And this act defined what is reproductive health, and it's clearly defined very similar to ICPD, that the reproductive health means physical, mental, social well-being in all matter relating to reproduction function and the processes. So this is very widely defined. And within this act, there is a 4 core issue of reproductive health right is included. That is safe motherhood, the family planning, safe abortions, and reproductive health morbidity. So this act focuses on the treatment of the reproductive health morbidity. And within the reproductive health morbidity, there are many components is included, and one of the component is infertility. So infertility is one of the issue included in the reproductive health morbidity. So this act, they say that the access to reproductive health right, and it's educable, quality, affordable. So it's also include for the infertility, treatment of infertility should also be the very educable and accessible, and the reliable and quality should be there. And this should be the choice of the person. So in our act, it's very clearly mentioned that every person has the reproductive health service on their choice. So it's a choice is for concerned persons. And regarding the morbidity care, it said that every person has right to counsel and treatment relating to reproductive morbidity from a health institution. So reproductive health morbidity, including the infertility, and it's also protected any discrimination, displacement, or violence on the basis of reproductive health morbidity. So even for the infertility, so there should not be any discrimination, and if it's done, and there is a penalty against it. So it's a very comprehensive provisions, and not only our Safe Motherhood and the Reproductive Health Right Act, but also our civil code. It's talk about little bit about the rights of the person born through the assisted reproduction. So it's recognized that if the person born from the assisted reproduction, the rights, very similar rights he or she carries like natural born children. So this is also within our legal framework. And regarding the policy landscape, so it's very lately in 2014 only, the National Health Policy first time acknowledged the surrogacy to address the infertility. And as I mentioned, that this our specific legislation on Safe Motherhood and the Reproductive Health Right Act 2018. This mentioned infertility as a part of reproductive health morbidity, and infertility under the big umbrella of reproductive health right or fundamental right. And Public Service Health Act is also enacted in 2018. This act acknowledged that IVF as specialized service, and National Health Policy that endorsed in 2019. That health policy that said that the service should be disintegrated and the infertility treatment to be extended at the provincial level, not only at the central level. And the public health regulations, it's said that the infertility service need to be get certified by FWD. This is a Family Welfare Division. So the government divisions will certify the institutions who are going to provide the infertility services. So particularly regarding the surrogacy, Nepal has not very long history to practice surrogacy. In 2014, September 18, Cabinet decided that surrogacy service should be provided to foreign couples also. But in a very short time in Nepal, Nepal faced the very devastating earthquake in 2015. And after the earthquake, there is a issue was came out. Like many foreigner couples, there is a surrogate mothers live in Nepal, and during the time of the earthquake, the many foreign couples, they want to bring the surrogate mother to their home, or they want their baby to bring back their home. And at that time, the issue was not very positively, but portrayed very negatively, that many Nepali women, they are exploited and all those things. So in that context, one of the lawyer filed a case in the Supreme Court challenging that this is a very exploitative situations, and this surrogacy practice, particularly to the foreign couple should be banned. And after the initial hearing from the Supreme Court issued the interim order to ban this surrogacy practice. And later on, when there is a full decision given by the Supreme Court in this case, they said that until and unless the Nepal enacted the specific legislation to deal with the surrogacy, this should be banned. So it should not be open through the executive order. So Supreme Court asks the government to enact the legislations, and then only they can regulate the surrogacy. And this decision is one of the key challenges now for us. As Pravina ji and the earlier speaker mentioned that the surrogacy and the assisted reproductions, we should see it as from the reproductive health right perspective. This is from the right, but in Nepal, it's very narrowly and negatively it's seen, and it's not like it's not like seen from the treatment of infertility or a health right issue. This is more taken it as an exploitation issue, and there is a possibility of exploitation. And not only the Supreme Court said that government should regularize the surrogacy after enacting the clear law in this issue, But also beyond that, the Supreme Court of Nepal gives some certain criteria, certain guidelines that need to be considered while enacting the law. And that is why we are not able to go to the government to lobby for the enactment of the surrogacy law, because the guidelines given by the Supreme Court is very, very narrow, and it's also contradict with our constitution provisions. As I mentioned that our constitution is very clear. There should be no discrimination on the basis of marital status. But the guideline given by the Supreme Court is said that the surrogacy service should be allowed only for the married couple. And that's clearly contradict with the constitutions. Our constitution is very clear that there should not be discrimination based on sexual and gender minority. But the guideline given by the Supreme Court, it said that this service should not be provided to the same-sex couple. So these are the issue, and we are very clear within the constitutions. Also, our Reproductive Health Right Act, it's very clearly said that this is the reproductive health is issue of autonomy. It's a choice of the person. But the guideline given by the Supreme Court of Nepal, it says that the surrogate mother can only be a married woman. So it's also the violation of choice of the woman or surrogate mother, and not only is only the married woman, but with the consent of the husband. So this is the very, very concerning thing is the woman cannot decide about her body by herself. It should be decided by her husband, or the consent of her husband is very, very necessary. And also regarding this surrogacy, the commercial surrogacy is completely banned in the direction given by the Supreme Court, and it said that only the obstetric surrogacy can be considered. So all these, whatever the guidelines is given, it's a very, very narrative. And in the current context, as the friend from the Cambodia, she clearly mentioned that how the CEDAW committee took it as a from the perspective of reproductive health, right? And that is very, very lacking in the judgment of Nepal. So that's why we are very reluctant how to proceed this issue, because at the present, the government is not in a position to completely avoid the direction given by the Supreme Court, because Supreme Court clearly said that this issue should be considered while drafting the law. So I think, and we are thinking that there is two options. One is we are preparing the counter petitions. So we are trying to file, because that petition was filed in very different context. Every people are very negative. The knowledge about the surrogacy and assisted reproduction is very limited. Even the international resource is very, very limited. So and the petitioner filed the petition fully in the very different context, and he presented the case in a very different and exploitative situation. So there is enough resources is already developed. So we are thinking that we should bring this issue again in the Supreme Court to relax whatever the guideline given by the Supreme Court. And that guidelines given by the Supreme Court, as I mentioned, is clearly contradict with the constitutional right and the fundamental right to choice, no discrimination on the basis of marital status, or no discrimination for sexual and gender minorities. So all those things. So one issue we are thinking that before starting the drafting of the law, we should go and approach the Supreme Court again with a more positive framework and from the perspective of reproductive health, right? That is the one stage. And another stage, we really impressed with the work done by the Cambodia. So the CEDAW committee had given very positive concluding comments, and not only giving the positive concluding comments, but following up with that concluding comments and giving the comment on the progress of that concluding comment. So what we are thinking that in Nepal, the CEDAW reporting is due in this November 2022. So in the both way, one is we are going to file a case, again the petition in the different perspective at the Supreme Court, and at the same time we are also thinking of using the UN Human Rights Treaty mechanism, and particularly the CEDAW committee. So we can also go this issue with this directives given by the Supreme Court. So we'll present that in the CEDAW committee, and we are very hopeful that during our reporting and the constructive dialogue, the CEDAW committee will definitely going to notice very, very narrow and the very that not acknowledging the reproductive health right this direction. So we are very hopeful that the CEDA committee will also giving the positive remark regarding this. So we are thinking this to strategy, the reporting at CEDA committee, as well as taking the petition at the Supreme Court again. But in the both situation, what we realize that how do we present this issue is also very, very important. So because this issue can be presented from the very exploitation and violence issue, and this issue can also presented from the autonomy issue. So there should be the mechanism to reduce this exploitative situation. But this is ultimately the reproductive health right issue. Assisted reproduction is one of the key things for the treatment of infertility. So we really need to aware the people, and the building the public opinion is also very important to get positive outcomes. So we are also working on building the public opinion and the clarifying the confusions and whatever the developed jurisprudence internationally, nationally, foreign countries from the right-based approach. We are disseminating that within the community as well. So these are our approaches, and hopefully in near future, in next time when we are meeting in this type of meeting, we can proudly say that Nepal not only has a constitutional framework, but we also have the specific legislation to deal assisted reproduction and the surrogacy as well. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much, Sabinji, with that very optimistic and positive note for that. So few things I also wanted to highlight from your presentation. One is definitely the cross-learning and learning from each other's context. It's been helpful, and we should continue that. And this kind of forum is also providing the space for each other to talk, for us to talk in each other's group, but also to connect with wider groups beyond the 3 countries and connect with the rest of the countries in Asia. So we really appreciate this space. And another thing I wanted to also kind of reflect on from all the 3 presentations is how in all these 3 countries, again, what Sarojini mentioned about the prohibitionist approach, and how the governments are, while developing the laws, but not only the government, but even the courts are using this more discriminatory framework, even in contradiction with the constitutional guarantee, and how that is linked to how surrogacy is perceived in more public opinion or social context. So the way case was brought in Nepal, the angle, only taking the angle of the exploitation of women, without really, we don't know whether the surrogate women were consulted or not. So that's another issue Chandy was also bringing, like in Cambodia, 5 years has been passed, but still the consultation is closed door and the wider discussion has not been done. And the public voice, and including the voices of surrogates, have not come forth. So I think the 2-3 things as a group we can also follow up is talking about how we need to build the public opinion, as you also said, and also how there has to be more and more dialogue on this issue, and how we can have the governments also do more, participatory consultation discussing about this laws, both in Cambodia, draft law, and upcoming in Nepal, if we are able to pursue the draft law. So yeah, so with that, I want to move to more kind of practical session now with my colleague Jihan on how we can work together, and especially how like the pro bono community can support building this human rights-based narrative. What are the things we can do as a lawyer, an activist, or advocate? So Jihan will take you through the exercise and discussing some of the things we can do, and also kind of mapping your interest to see potential areas of collaboration after this session as well. So Jihan, over to you. And you also have 17 minutes as the rest of the panel. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you so much, Prabina, and thank you, everyone. Thank you for your continuing interest in this session. So in the next 15-17 minutes, we will have a virtual activity, which is the same as what we did during the Asia Pro Bono conference. And I assume that most, if not all, of the participants that we have here now have not been part of our session last week. But if you have been, then you know what we are about to do. So first, let's be clear on what we want to achieve through the activity, and a bit of sharing after. So what we want to do is first to identify the ways on how pro bono can support building and deepening the human rights-based narratives on infertility, surrogacy, assisted reproduction, or AR in Asia, in our region. And the second is for us to be able to map our participation, our collective participation, individual involvement, and or interest to be involved on pro bono matters or justice matters related to AR and human rights. And then the third one is for us to be able to share examples, particularly from the center's perspective, on how we have worked with pro bono actors on deepening the understanding of AR and human rights in the region, as well as facilitating access to justice for all parties involved. And we will do this particularly for the first two objectives by using the Google Jamboard, which many of us may already be very familiar. So I'm gonna type on the chat the link to that Jamboard, and I hope you can all access it. And maybe we can share the first board on the screen. So when you click on the link, you will see there are going to be 5 boards, and we will go through each of them one at a time. So the first 4, they would contain suggested or sample activities or matters that pro bono actors have done or can do to be able to help build a rights-based narrative on AR in the region and even beyond. These activities, as we go through each of them, you will realize that they are not region or country specific, so they can be applied in different contexts. So even at the national, local, national, regional, or global level, depending on the activity itself. And what I will ask you all is to do is to click on the link put in that chat, and which will go over each of the board one at a time. I'll be reading each activity and project, and if I may ask each of you to use the colored circles on both sides, though, so we have the green ones on the left side and then the blue ones on the right side. We will use that to indicate whether that particular activity, as described in the particular sticky note, is that something that we have done before? Is that something that we can do, or something that we are interested to do even if we have not done that before? So you can use the green circles on the left side, so those light green ones, for those activities that you have done before or you have been involved in, maybe something that you have directly done, or maybe something that you have indirectly supported. And then the blue circles, you can drag that to the particular activity or project that you have not been involved in, but looking at it, maybe you think to yourself that this is something that you can do, you have the skills, you have the expertise, or you have the interest to do some of these activities at some point, not necessarily in the next month or so, but at some point. So now, after going over the 4 boards, you will see in the last board, there is one where we can provide other activities or matters that you think is missing based on your experience or expertise, and we can add that later. I'll give maybe a couple of minutes for that if we have the time. So, okay, now, looking at this, so if we look at the first board, the first activity there is representing. So this particularly applies to lawyers. So maybe, I'm not sure now in terms of how many lawyers we have here as participants, but if you have represented clients in AR-related cases, maybe you have acted as a lawyer for a woman, a surrogate who has been detained for engaging in surrogacy, or maybe you're interested in filing a case questioning the constitutionality of a particular AR law or policy or implementation of that. So you can drag the green or the blue circle on that. So if you have not done it yet, but you're interested to do that, then you can use the blue circle. But if you have done that before, then you can drag the green one. The second activity there below is supporting other lawyers and advocates. So this would apply, you may be a lawyer or you may not be a lawyer, but you have supported other advocates and lawyers who are working with or have been engaged by parties in a surrogacy arrangement. So when we say parties, that would refer to the surrogate themselves, or maybe to the intending parents. So it depends on the kind of engagement. So maybe you have provided support in drafting pleadings or conducted background research. So you can drag the green circle. But if that's something that you have not done, but you are interested to do, then you can drag the blue circle. The third activity, so is from the top, the providing legal advice. So maybe as a lawyer now, back to being a lawyer, you are knowledgeable on AR laws and policies. And so you have provided legal advice to the parties involved in a surrogacy arrangement. Or maybe you have reviewed contracts if contracts have been drafted to in that surrogacy arrangement. So if you have done that, then please use the green one. If you have not done that, but you are interested to do that, then you can use the blue circle. The fourth, the one on the bottom, is participating in UN global regional political spaces. So this is quite similar, or this is like, for example, what Shandy was sharing earlier about advocacy before the Committee on Discrimination Against Women. So maybe you have participated in that, or if you have participated, then you can use the green button. But if you have not, but is interested to do that, then you can use the blue button. So moving on to the next board, we can see that in this board, there are again 4 activities. So the first one is organizing, or maybe you have not you're not the lead organizer, but you have supported or participated in online and in-person external events to share knowledge or challenges, lessons learned about ART or assisted reproductive technologies, or you can just refer to it as AR laws and policies and advocacy around it. So if you have participated in any of that, maybe before this session, please use the green circle. And if not, but you are interested maybe in the future, if we have something similar in the future, then we can also invite you to future sessions and events. Then on the bottom left, if you have conducted or interested to conduct or support external trainings, so if you have been working on AR and human rights, then you may be very capable of providing external trainings to other CSOs, to other advocates, maybe to even legislators or judges and other stakeholders just in general. But maybe if you have not done that, but you think you can build the skills to provide those trainings and understand more about AR and human rights, then you can use the blue button. The second one, for the one on the right, is organizing internal sessions. So this would be different from the one on the left, which is external facing. So maybe within your organization, if you have one, or within your school, if you're a student, university, or maybe in your firm, then this would apply. So if you have maybe organized something internally, whether that's a learning session or trainings, just to build awareness or just kind of raise the issue on AR, any issue related to AR, maybe infertility in general, then please use the green one if you have not done that yet, but you are interested to do that. And we can also, you can also reach out to us if you're interested to work with us on that. You can use the blue button. For the last one on this board, conducting or supporting the evidence gathering in terms of AR and maybe surrogacy or IVF or infertility in general. So this is more of the research type. So if you have been involved in that, then please use the green circle, drag it to that to the bottom right. If you have not been involved, but you think you have that capacity or you have that skill or you have that interest and you can build that skill later on, then please use the blue circle. Moving on to the third board. So on the third board, the first one there on the top is drafting articles for academic journals on AR in the law. So that could be in journals, maybe that's a legal journal or even a medical journal or a journal on sociology. So if you have done something like that before, use the green one. It's something you have not done before, then please use the blue one. On the bottom is engaging with the media. So maybe you have written or can write op-eds or articles that could be published before like a newspaper, whether that is online or in print, or maybe someone from the media has reached out to you asking for your opinion or your thoughts around infertility or surrogacy or any AR-related issue, then please use the green button if you have engaged in that. But if not, if you're more of also interested in media engagement about AR, then please use the blue button. And it's okay if you have not done something and you have not done any of these activities and you're not interested to do any of the activities. It's the purpose really is for us to map where we are now in terms of the group that we have in this virtual room. The next one is drafting external publications. So maybe aside from academic journals, maybe you have written other technical resources such as briefing papers or reports or fact sheets on AR and the law. So AR again is so broad. So maybe, you know, if you have done like even a 1-pager, a 2-pager on that, then please use the green one. If not, but you can do it and interested to do it sometime in the future, please use blue. The last one here is on drafting reports as part of the UN review of states' compliance with international human rights treaties. So I think Chandi did mention earlier that for Lao PDR, the CEDAW committee is going to review the government soon and its compliance with the convention. So maybe you have been involved in UN review processes before, but if not, if you are interested to be involved in that, because I think here we are in this kind of a panel, we are very much interested as well to learn more what's happening in Lao and kind of see how we can as well collaborate or exchange our knowledge on particular in the issue of surrogacy, because this is really affecting kind of the region overall. And then the last board with specific activities is the one on the first activity there is providing technical or legal support. So on that 4th board, if we can move to the 4th board, providing technical support, maybe a member of the parliament or Congress has reached out to you, or OHCHR even has reached out to you asking for comments or feedback on certain related ART laws and policies, or maybe something about the situation that has happened in your country, in your context about surrogacy, then please use the green one. If not interested, use the blue one. The one below, the bottom left is if you have translated maybe AR laws and policies. So as we know in the region, I'm not sure what the number is, but we have so many languages, and many of the laws that are being passed in different countries are often not also available in English. So for us to learn from each other, sometimes we would need the translation, that's a kind of a basic need for many of us, a translation of AR-related laws and policies. If you have done that, use the green, and if you haven't, but you're interested on doing that, then you can use the blue one. Then we have monitoring and mapping opposition and challenges to AR. So if you have, so this is more of a, not kind of a proactive strategy, external facing, but just engaging with, doing some research around opposition, who is kind of against maybe decriminalizing surrogacy, or who is in favor of continuing to prohibit commercial surrogacy or surrogacy just in general. So if you have done that, green one, not but interested to do, please use the blue one. Then the last one is on leading or drafting, leading or drafting public letters or statements, sign-on letters like we would usually circulate with other advocates, or maybe even like an online petition. So if you have done something around that related to AR, then please use the blue circle. But if not, then just use the blue one. So those were all kind of the activities, sample activities that we have. So this is definitely not exhaustive. There are so many other things that we can do, as advocates, as justice actors, as pro bono actors. And if there's anything missing from that, maybe I could just give a minute. I don't know, in terms of the time, Pravina, how many minutes do I have? Like 3, 1?
2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. So maybe I'll just leave it at that. And then, if you have any other thoughts on that, please do just add that on the online link. And because I would also just like to share in the last a minute and a half, maybe, about our experience working with pro bono actors within the center. So to kind of make sure that we are advancing the multitude of human rights that Sarojini, Shandy, Sabine have been talking about, even Prabina have been talking about, which is impacted by the human rights impacted by access to or lack of access to AR. We have worked with different pro bono partners such as, for example, Baker McKenzie, Magnuson, Arnold, and Porter to conduct comparative research on rights-based laws and regulatory frameworks on AR to support our work in the region. And we were also able to work with other valuable partners such as Ashurst through their dedicated reproductive rights practice group for a report in the UN Universal Periodic Review of India. And we also had the privilege of working with DLA Piper to provide a human rights analysis of a draft surrogacy law in Cambodia. And that was something that Chandy mentioned as well earlier. So we worked with a pro bono partner on that too. So these are just some of the work that we, at the center, we have been able to do with pro bono partners. And as we have listed in the boards, there are so many other ways that pro bono support can be provided. And with that, I'll just end there and thank everyone. And I hope you continue to be interested and involved on the issue of infertility and AR in the region. Back to you, Praveen.
Thank you so much, Jihan, for this very interactive exercise. And also thank you to all the participants who kind of express their interest as well as whether they have done something for AR surrogacy in the past. So I could see a lot of blue dots in many of the stickers, so a lot of interest. So hopefully we can kind of continue this collaboration. So as I shared during the Asia Pro Bono conference as well, and some of the participants, I think you are also in the Asia Pro Bono conference, and for the new participants as well, if you are especially from Laos, if you would like to continue this collaboration, please feel free to reach out to any of us. Our email are available through the Secretariat. And I can also send the email in the chat link at the end of the session, maybe. And we have now like 25 minutes for the question, answer, feedback, or any reflection you can share from the participants. We already have two in the chat. One is specific to Sarojini. Lochana had asked a question sometime back, and we got the translation for that question. So Sarojini, if you can get that question while we are waiting for others. And the question is, I'll let you quickly read the translation. So Lochana is asking to Sarojini, want to ask in India if there is a woman from your country who goes to another country to surrogacy, and is it will become a lawsuit. If a woman from another country goes to India to get pregnant instead, how to solution? So Sarojini, if you can take this.
Pravina, is it on the chat box? I could barely hear you.
It's on the chat, but it was some time back. So if you scroll up in the chat. Let me copy it again and
รจนา
I could see
ถาม
that.
อยู่ในข้อความแชทนะ
Can I raise the question? Want to ask in India if there is a woman
หรือว่า
from
ถา
your
มทางนี้เลยบอก
another country to surrogacy, and is it still, that is the question, right, Prabina?
Mhm.
Okay, great. Yeah. I'm just, there is this is a problem. I think we have a major internet issue today, unfortunately, but somehow it went well till now. So I might disappear for a minute and then come back, or it might. But I think the response from me is, see, if somebody is going from India to the other country for surrogacy, I don't think there is anything which can stop them, right? Because the only thing is whether the child born through that surrogacy has been given the citizenship or not is the question. I think that is something which should come into our discussions, which we often, miss out on that particular aspect also, because in many countries, this is what is happening. Like if surrogacy is banned, for example, in France or Italy, earlier, now when they came to India, and when they go back, when they have a surrogate and have a child with the surrogate and then go back with the child to their own country, the child will not be given the citizenship of that particular country. So that is something, then, I don't like the word stateless, which I disagree. But those complexities are all very much there at the diplomatic level. So that is something which we haven't come across such experiences, but sure, like people will go to other, they are going for the PCP and DT, sex selection, and also for surrogacy, crossing the borders, which is happening. People went to Thailand. When Thailand allowed, people went to Nepal, people went to some other countries. Ukraine, people are going now. So I'm saying earlier to Georgia. So this is like a transnational tourism, reproductive tourism, I can say, or accessing the services like any other medical tourism kind of thing. To get a pregnant, instead, how to solution? I don't think anybody from any other country can come and have surrogacy in India, which I made it very clear in the beginning itself. Because it is only for the people from the Indian origin with certain age, with certain medical criteria, they will be allowed to access surrogacy in India. So that question is not applicable. From 2013, this has been a guideline by the Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of External Affairs, and also later, from the Ministry of Health and the bill also in the legislation. So I hope that is clear.
Rabina, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you, Sarojini. So I was saying there's another question in chat about the nationality. So the question is, in the past, is it surrogacy has had issues related to nationality? And Sarojini, I think you touched on a little bit. I can share a little bit from what we saw from the European Court of Human Rights, but if any other panel member would like to address to this question as well, please feel free. So one example we have seen is from France that Sarojini also mentioned, because France doesn't recognize surrogacy. So when a couple enter with the child born out of surrogacy, the government of France wasn't allowing to give the nationality to this child, and that case came to the European Court of Human Rights, and the European Court of Human Rights has decided that despite the regulation not recognizing surrogacy in France, the government of France is obliged, given other human rights framework, including the CRC, it is obliged to provide the nationality rights to the child. So that is one particular instance I could think of and share. But other panel members, please feel free if you have any other thoughts on this question about nationality.
Maybe I could just add on to that what you already mentioned, Pravina and then Sarojini, because I think when we were enumerating the different human rights, right, autonomy, equality and non-discrimination, benefits of scientific progress, all these human rights, I think we did not mention the right to a nationality and to know the parents and origin of a child. So maybe that's something that we miss, and maybe if it's not that clear, we do recognize that as also a basic, human right, and it's a principle that must be kind of incorporated, human right that must be incorporated in developing or considering developing AR related laws and policies, because a child that is born of a surrogacy arrangement has the right to a nationality and to know their parents and of their origin.
Thank you, Jihan. So anyone else, if you would like to ask question or contribute from your experience as well, please feel free. It's not only asking question, you can also share your experience or comment or any feedback. We still have, let's see, check the time. we still have like 12 minutes in our time left. So yeah, Faila Fan has her hand raised. So yeah, over to you. And if you are, I guess you are speaking in Lao, so we can change to the English channel for those who are not following Lao. Yeah.
ภาษาลาวเด้อเจ้าส
โด
บาย
ย
ดีเพิ่นที่อยู่ในกองประชุมในครั้งนี้เนาะข้าพเจ้าขออนุญาตมีคำเห็นแลกเปลี่ยนหลายกว่าข้าพเจ้าจะขอกลับคืนไป5แต่ตอนจุดเริ่มต้นของคำว่าการละเมิดสิทธิมนุษย์เนาะอันนี้ในนามมุมมองส่วนตัวของข้าพเจ้าเนาะถ้าว่าบ่ถูกอันใดก็ต้องขอโทษขออภัยเนาะเพราะว่านี่มันกองประชุมแลกเปลี่ยนข้าพเจ้ามองว่าคำว่าสิทธิมนุษย์เนาะมันเป็นสิทธิของบุคคลได้หนึ่งที่จะกระทำหรือบ่กระทำหรือว่าที่กฎหมายได้กำหนดไว้ให้แต่มันบ่หมายความว่ากสิทธิ์ตัวนั้นเจ้าจะไปกระทำกับผู้ใดผู้หนึ่งก็ได้หั่นน่ะเนาะข้าพเจ้าอยากบอกหนูนี้เนาะการที่ให้มีลูกหรือการที่จะมีการเพราะว่าในอย่างเมื่อกี้สุขภาพเจริญพันธุ์นี่นะเนาะข้าพเจ้าเชื่อว่ากฎหมายเองระเบียบเองและสิทธิมนุษย์เองให้สิทธิ์เต็มที่กับบุคคลที่ต้องการยากใดแต่การที่เอาทางด้านแพทย์เนาะว่าความสามารถทางด้านการแพทย์เข้ามาช่วยเฉพาะผู้ที่แบบมีลูกยากนี่นะข้าพเจ้าถามว่าเฮ็ดได้บ่เฮ็ดได้มีความสามารถเฮ็ดได้บ่แต่การเอานำใช้วิทยาศาสตร์ทางการแพทย์เข้ามานี่ความหมายของข้าพเจ้าอยากให้มาเชื่อมต่อกับบุคคลที่ต้องการอยากมีลูกอันนี้คือสิทธิ์ที่ข้าเจ้าควรจะได้และเฮาควรจะปกป้องตัวนี้ข้าพเจ้าเห็นดีเป็นอย่างยิ่งเนาะในการจะปิ้นปัวได้ก็ดีในการจะเสร้าวิธีการได้ก็ดีต่างๆนานาทางด้านวิทยาศาสตร์เข้ามาเพื่อให้ผู้หญิงที่ต้องการอยากมีลูกนั้นสามารถมีลูกได้แต่การมีลูกนี้ต้องมีด้วยตัวเองโดยที่เอาเครื่องมือทางการแพทย์เข้ามาช่วยอันนี้ในมุมมองข้าพเจ้าอันนี้คือข้อเพศของสิทธิที่ข้าพเจ้าคิดว่าเหมาะสมที่เราจะต้องปกป้องและช่วยเหลือข้าเจ้าแต่การที่เอาสิทธิของตัวเองตัวนั้นไปเป็นพันธะให้ผู้อื่นในการที่เอาลูกมีลูกให้ตนเองข้าพเจ้าถามว่าในตอนนี้เฮามีเครื่องมือการคุ้มครองปกป้องเหมือนพร้อมบ่ข้าพเจ้าเชื่อว่ายังบ่พร้อมแต่ว่าข้าพเจ้าเสนอนี้ก็บ่ได้หมายความว่าจะมีการคัดค้านแต่อย่างใดแต่ว่าเฮาแค่มองเบิ่งว่าในปัจจุบันนี้เฮาควรจะเฮ็ดหรือบ่เฮ็ดหรือเฮามีความสามารถเฮ็ดได้ส่ำใดข้าพเจ้าคิดว่ามันยังบ่มีส่วนตัวข้าพเจ้าเด้ออันนี้เนาะคิดว่ายังบ่เห็นดีพอเท่าที่ควรเหตุผลก็คือว่าสิ่งที่เกิดขึ้นนั้นมองอีกอย่างนึงมันเป็นทางด้านเรื่องการค้าแดเรื่องผลประโยชน์หลายๆทางที่จะได้รับจากสิ่งดังกล่าวนี้แล้วสิ่งที่ตามมากว่านั้นอีกก็คือปัญหาที่มันจะเกิดขึ้นในสังคมเนาะก็คือเมื่อกี้หลายๆประเทศก็ยกปัญหาขึ้นมามันก็มีหลายๆปัญหาที่มันเกิดขึ้นที่เฮาบ่ได้มีการกำหนดบ่ได้มีการวางระเบียบเอาไว้แล้วมันก็พาให้เกิดขึ้นแล้วก็เฮ็ดให้มีข้อขัดแย้งกันต่างๆนานาขึ้นมาแล้วนอกนั้นที่ข้าพเจ้าเบิ่งก็คือเป็นห่วงบ่ว่าแม่เดียวแต่หลายพ่อแต่ว่าแม่เดียวมันบ่ได้อยู่บ่อนเดียวกันมันกระจายออกไปอยู่ทุกทั่วโลกทุกมุมโลกผู้หนึ่งนี่บางเทื่อถ้ามีอาชีพนี่นะผู้หนึ่งนี่บางเทื่ออาจจะสามารถผลิตลูกได้ในชั่วชีวิตตัวเองนี่นะประมาณ10 15 คนนี่แหละที่จะเฮ็ดได้ถ้าสมมุติยึดเป็นอาชีพเนาะฉะนั้นเฮาลองมาเบิ่งว่าลูกที่ออกจากเหล่านี้มันเป็นเขาฮ้องว่าจะมี DNA ของเพิ่นเนาะของผู้เป็นพ่อบอกของผู้มีเป็นแม่ที่ผสมกันเนาะคุณบอกแล้วเอามาให้ฟักคันเด้ DNA นั้นเรามีส่วนร่วมน่ะบ่น่ะลูกผู้นั้นมันจะเป็นของไผเนาะแล้วต่อหน้าเราการพัวพันสังคมเฮาต่อหน้าระหว่างลูกที่เกิดมาพวกนี้นะมันจะกลับคืนมาหากันบ่เป็นไปได้บ่ตัวอย่างลูกค่อยลูกเจ้านี่แล้วเวลาบังเอิญว่าเขาเจ้ามามักฮักกันเด้เซลล์ตัวนี้ มันคล้ายๆว่าลูกแม่เดียวกันเอากันนี่นะเนาะมันก็จะมีผลต่อการเจริญเติบโตของเด็กในต่อหน้าอนาคตอันนี้อันนึงแล้วอันต่างๆที่หลายๆประเทศเจอเนาะเวลาเกิดมาแล้วเวลาคบมาแล้วมันบ่อยากให้ฮ ฮอดกำหนดมาแล้วบ่อยากส่งลูกหรือว่าเกิดมาแล้วสัญชาติจะเป็นของไผประเทศเจ้ารับแต่ประเทศค่อยบ่รับแล้วเวลาจะเอาเข้ามามันจะเกิดมีปัญหาหยังต่างๆนานาเนาะแล้วเวลาเรื่องสิทธิ์ของเด็กน่ะอนาคตเด้สมมุติว่ามื้อนึงเราฮู้ว่าอ้าวอันนี้บ่แม่นแม่ขิงให้กำเนิดค่อยกลับคืนไปว่าค่อยอยากส่งหาแม่กำเนิดค่อยแล้วค่อยอยากไปเอาสิทธิ์ตัวนั้นเด้มันจะคุ้มครองกันได้เนาะมันจะตามมาด้วยปัญหาต่างๆหลายๆอย่างอันนั้นคือส่วนตัวของข้าพเจ้าคิดและที่จริงมันก็ยังมีหลายๆอันที่ข้าพเจ้าอยากนำเสนอเนาะแต่ว่าทั้งหมดที่ข้าพเจ้ามาว่าเว้ามานี้ก็เป็นเพียงในความคิดเห็นในปัจจุบันนะปัญหาที่มันยังเป็นอยู่ปัจจุบันแต่ถ้าว่าเฮามีแนวโน้มที่จะเฮ็ดได้และสามารถเฮ็ดได้ในอนาคตข้าพเจ้าคิดว่ามันยังใช้เวลาแล้วก็ต้องซอกเครื่องมือในการมาคุ้มครองปัญหาดังกล่าวนี้ให้มันดีที่สุดก่อนให้มันครบถ้วนให้มันสมบูรณ์แบบเนาะข้าพเจ้าก็คงจะบ่คัดค้านดอกถ้าสมมุติว่าฮอดจุดนั้นมาแล้วมันเห็นว่าองค์ประกอบทุกอย่างมันสมบูรณ์เนาะมันเพียบพร้อมฉะนั้นอันนี้ข้อแลกเปลี่ยนเอานะเนาะสำหรับประเด็นนี้ขอขอบใจ
Thank you so much, Pailampan, for your reflections, and also thank you for the translation. Yeah, I agree. You did mention about supporting like surrogacy being available to the infertile couple, so that acknowledgement is there. But also you highlighted some of the challenges which are there definitely. So we cannot deny the complexity of this issue, and also the kind of layer of challenges that comes within. That's why I think we do need to distill this issue quite a lot and have this dialogue. So from that perspective, I think you bring in so many different level of challenges that may come, including the emotional aspects that would come for in future from the child's perspective. They are all very important issue which need a lot of conversation and a lot of dialogue. So yeah, I think I can only comment to that extent on your reflection, but thank you so much. We also have two other reflections, and I think we also got translation for those reflections. So one is, if we research on draft regulation on surrogacy, is it necessary to determine that the nationality or dependent on the agreement between the birth parents and the parents who will adopt their children? And the other reflection is this is a translation from the reflection. So are there any countries that have laws regarding surrogacy? So I can quickly respond the second one. So definitely, as Sarojini presented, there is a specific surrogacy law from India. I think that's the only law on surrogacy from the region. We also have some other countries having similar laws, but outside the region. But on the first reflection about the nationality, I can quickly say that the nationality, it's the kind of intending parents' nationality that goes an intending parents' obligation also, and the state obligation as well to give the nationality to the child, as I shared from the example of the trans and the European Court of Human Rights. But other, we also have Thailand. Thank you, Jihan. So, but other panel members, if you have any reflection on the surrogacy law as well as on the nationality, please feel free to respond. Jihan, do you want to talk about the AR law in Thailand, which I missed? Yeah.
No, I think, yeah, just to mention that I think that was another law, AR-related surrogacy law in the region. And if you look at it, what Chandy actually presented for Cambodia, the draft law, it's very similar to the AR law in Thailand. So I think you would have a sense of what it looks like in Thailand. I think I'm just thinking that maybe there was sort of an inspiration from the Thai law, as well as maybe from the draft before of the Indian AR surrogacy bills before. Maybe just to quickly, but I see a hand raised. Maybe we could just address that first.
So we have Lochana. Lochana, please go ahead.
เจ้าข้าพเจ้าจะขอแลกเปลี่ยนประสบการณ์เกี่ยวกับตัวสัญชาติเนาะตัวนี้หันแม่นขึ้นกับกฎหมายภายในของแต่ละประเทศเนาะแต่คือกฎหมายลาวเฮานี่กฎหมายบริษัทสัญชาติลาวเฮานี่ก็ได้กำหนดจะแจ้งว่าเด็กที่เกิดอยู่นอกประเทศหั้นเนาะเกิดจากคู่ผัวเมียที่ถูกต้องตามกฎหมายของคนเชื้อชาติและสัญชาติลาวนี่เนาะแม่นขึ้นกับการตกลงข ของผู้เป็นพ่อเป็นแม่ในการจะให้ลูกถือสัญชาติใดหั่นเนาะแต่ว่าก็ต้องในเบื้องของประเทศที่เด็กไปเกิดหั่นเนาะว่าเขาเจ้ากำหนดแนวใดอันเพื่อเป็นอีกหนึ่งทางเลือกให้กับผู้เป็นพ่อเป็นแม่จะตัดสินใจว่าจะให้ลูกถือสัญชาติของประเทศที่เด็กเกิดบ่หรือว่าจะให้ถือสัญชาติน้ำมันผู้เป็นพ่อหรือเป็นแม่เนาะแต่ว่าคือเด็กเกิดอยู่ในเด็กที่เกิดจากพ่อแม่ที่เป็นคนต่างประเทศอยู่ในสปปลาวเขาก็แม่นกฎหมายเฮาหันแม่นให้เป็นการตกลงของพ่อแม่ที่เป็นชาวต่างประเทศหันจะเป็นที่สัญชาติต่างกันหันหรือว่าสัญชาติเดียวกันหันมันขึ้นกับการตกลงของเจ้าแต่พวกเขาบ่ได้อนุมัติให้มีสัญชาติลาวอันนี้เป็นกฎหมายลาวเฮาได้กำหนดไว้ชัดเจนเกี่ยวกับสัญชาติของเด็กหันเนาะเพราะว่าปัญหาที่พวกเขายกขึ้นมายิบยกล้มกันนี่เนาะอันที่1มันเป็นเรื่องการปกป้องแม่หญิงการปกป้องแม่หญิงมันสิกล่าวไปถึงการช่วยเหลือด้านกฎหมายเนาะแล้วก็สิไปมีส่วนร่วมในเรื่องของโปรโมโนของเขาเข้ามาแทรกซ้อนในหันเป็นในการขอการช่วยเหลือของพระเจ้าหันเนาะอันนี้เป็นอันนึงและอันที่2มันว่าเรื่องสิทธิมนุษย์มันก็ทั้งปกป้องทั้งผู้เป็นแม่หญิงที่ไปรับถือผ้าแทนหันแล้วก็มันก็ว่าเรื่องการปกป้องสิทธิเด็กหันเนาะมันก็หลายอย่างที่มันเกี่ยวพันกันถ้าเฮามายกมาล้มกันในมื้อนี้มันก็สิยาวเนาะมันก็สิเวลาก็สิบ่ให้แต่ว่าอันนี้แม่นบทเรียนของสปปลาวเฮาเนาะคือเด็กน้อยเกิดจากพ่อแม่ที่เป็นคนต่างดาวอยู่สปปลาวเฮานี่บ่แม่นว่าเขาเจ้าจะได้สัญชาติลาวได้บ่แม่นเนาะเขาเจ้าก็ได้ถือสัญชาติตามผู้เป็นพ่อเป็นแม่ที่เป็นคนต่างดาวของรัฐบาลสปปลาวเฮาหั่นเนาะคือว่าเขาเจ้ามีสัญชาติใดก็แม่นถือสัญชาตินั้นตามผู้เป็นพ่อเป็นแม่ของเขาเจ้าหั่นเนาะอันนี้และคันว่าพ่อกับแม่มีสัญชาติต่างกันก็แม่นถือสัญชาติตามการตกลงของผู้เป็นพ่อเป็นแม่ของเด็กหั่นเนาะอันนี้แม่นบทเรียนของสปปลาวเฮาตามกฎหมายว่าด้วยสัญชาติลาวเฮาเนาะฉบับปี2015เจ้าขอบใจ
Thank you, Lochana, and thank you for the translation about sharing on the nationality provisions in Lao laws. That's good information and really helpful. We're almost at the end of our session, the time. We only have 2 minutes left. So, Jihan, you had something to share, and maybe we can take that as a last contribution before I close the session. Yeah, Jihan, over to you.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add now that to the point by Lochana and just the questions on nationality, because I think now that there are a lot of questions about nationality, how do we deal with that? I think because of all these questions, and there could be, really complex situations that may arise, especially if surrogacy is allowed, not just for maybe both in the context maybe of Cambodia, like only Cambodian citizens, but would allow maybe a foreigner. And so even if now we consider a surrogacy that includes a donor from another, another nationality. So it could be very complex, but I think that brings us to the point of really the importance of having consultations, which Shandy has also highlighted earlier, which that was not done in Cambodia, because there are so many situations that may not be properly addressed by laws and policies that are being drafted and put in place. So really just the importance of consultations and really sharing those, even practical kind of challenges and issues that must be considered whenever we try to develop a framework, a legal framework that would govern surrogacy or assisted reproduction in general.
Thank you so much, Jihan. Yeah, I cannot reiterate or highlight enough the need for consultation, both by the government in trying to draft these legislation, but also the dialogue or consultation among us as a human rights activists or feminists or the lawyers or the advocates. So I think this is something we need to have a very cross-cutting and multi-sectoral discussions as well. And to close this session, I just wanted to reiterate few key principles on human rights, which all of the presenters have highlighted in different forms today while they were presenting. So as we are saying that the human rights norm on surrogacy is nascent and it's growing, we also need to kind of take a note that the international core human rights treaties like the ICCPR, ICSCR, CEDAW, CRC, they have all these provisions already established there, and also the treaty body jurisprudence on other issues of reproductive rights, on the maternal health, on abortion, on contraception. They've already laid quite a rich jurisprudence on some of the basic human rights principles we can draw on for the surrogacy as well. So just to reiterate what has my fellow speakers have already highlighted, but to reiterate, so in the surrogacy and AR context also, the guiding human right principle we need to kind of uphold is the right to bodily autonomy and reproductive autonomy. We did see some of the challenges in terms of the draft law in Cambodia and in Nepal also about how this has been challenged in terms of the not being able to consent by herself, the woman need for the husband's consent, for example, and other issues. A second principle that needs to be upheld, which hasn't really been upheld quite a lot, is the right to equality and non-discrimination. And as many of the speakers shared about how this is only available to a certain section like the heterosexual married couple, so how it is not available to same-sex couple as well as it is discriminated against marital status. So that is also something we need to keep in mind. And other principles which I will just mention is right to highest attainable standard of health, right to benefit from the scientific advancement, right to informed consent, right to inclusion and participation and perspective of those most impacted. So the consultation, we cannot emphasize more. And of course, the best interest of the child, because as you also kind of highlighted many of the issues that concerns the children, this is another principle we do need to upheld in terms of the best interest, which also includes the issue around nationality, the right of the child to know the origin and so forth. So these are the principles. If we keep them in mind in our conversation as well, I think we will be able to probably, talk more, build the narrative more from the human rights framework and human rights perspective. So with that, I would really like to thank all my fellow speakers to present in this panel. That they have been excellent presentations, and also the participants. You've been very, very active and participated with all your questions, comments, and all your reflections. So thank you for that as well. My thank you to the Secretariat colleagues as well, all the supports, especially thanks to the translators who have been, really supporting us in terms of getting all the conversation and getting the messages across in so many different languages. So thank you so much. And with that, I would close the session for today. Thank you and bye everyone. Bye-bye. We still have magic word.